Okay, great. So this is the SIG cluster lifecycle meeting on Tuesday, the 23rd of May, 2017. And let's have a look at what's on the agenda. Tim, you have some things. Do you want to go through them?
Sure. I was hoping Mike would be around. So I'll go through the ones that doesn't need Mike yet, or Lucas. The first one is same defaults for the audit log. This will be important now that they're doing better audit logging in 1.7. Operators will definitely want to get access to that facility, and I don't know if we even have a default of where we want to mount or put that file.
So I can comment on that since we've been working on the audit logging side of things on the SIG-auth. So the basic structure is that there'll be two options in 1.7, hopefully. One will be a file with structured JSON, and the other one will be an actual webhook that will allow people to receive audit log events. So if one of those is more helpful than the other, then yeah.
The webhook needs to be configured, though, via command line, right? And
the way that webhooks are configured for anything in Kubernetes is that you pass it a kubeconfig as a description of how to create a secure connection to the actual backend servers.
Yeah, so that means that there need to be some type of plumbing through either that or some generalized wrapper for the plumbing.
Correct. So that might be out of scope, depending on your implementation.
Okay. Tim, were you hoping to wait for everyone else, for other people to show up for talking about the other issues?
Those are the ones, the upstream downstream packaging one, I was hoping for feedback from Mike Denise. He's not here. For the self-hosted being broken one, I don't know. I was hoping for Lucas to give more information on it because I started looking into it, but I'm not entirely certain at what state it broke and how to reproduce the broken behavior, because I've tried a couple of times and I can get into a broken state only by misconfiguring CNI, right? So I don't exactly know what conditions get us into that state.
Interesting. I suppose it's possible that it isn't actually broken, but that Lucas thought it was broken because he accidentally misconfigured CNI.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like I don't have history there. I only have anecdotal evidence from the single ticket. I guess that kind of points to whether or not we're going to turn on end-to-end testing too. If we had end-to-end testing, this would give us much better visibility into when something breaks and how it breaks.
Yeah.
I know Jacob is here. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
We do have end-to-end testing default options for just kubeadmin, init, and join. We just don't have many other variants. Like self-hosted is not the default option, or file-based discovery or HTTPS-based discovery. We just use the normal token-based discovery. But we could definitely have more coverage there.
Well, I was kind of thinking of like a full separate suite, similar to the way COPS is configured, right? So it stands up the cluster from nothing, soup to nuts, and then actually runs the full end-to-end suite.
That's what we do. I think we just don't have many variants in the stand-up itself. So self-hosted is an option at initialization time. So we run the full conformance test suite, all of the conformance end-to-end tests. But we don't have many variants on how we initialize the cluster in the first place. We just use the defaults.
Okay.
Right. So the point here is that there is end-to-end testing, but there isn't end-to-end testing for self-hosted.
Right.
Okay. It sounds like that would be a nice thing to add, given that we're going in that direction. So maybe consider this a request to please enable that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something anyone could add. It's not Google specific. All of that code is open source. I can try to help people if anyone wants to attempt to take that on. It should mostly be cloning some files and messing some bits to change how we initialize. But I'm kind of bogged down this quarter already, and we still have plenty of post-mortem action items that don't include this. But yeah, I'll consider it a request.
Yeah, Luke, I would actually flip that around and say the people who are working on self-hosted should consider it part of building self-hosted to write the tests for it and not try to throw all the testing on the single person.
Yep, absolutely. Good call. Cool. Well, I guess that takes us onto my item, which is really just to apologize. I haven't had capacity to work on upgrades. And given that we're now 2 weeks out from code freeze, I'm just going to call it and say that unless someone else picks it up and tries to take it over the line, I don't think we're going to make it for 1.7. So, sorry.
So I guess one thing there, Luke, is we don't have to have them be coded, automatic, like fancy scriptable upgrades. We need to have a procedure for upgrades. So if we said kube admin was beta in 1.6 and someone installed a cluster, like, can we write documentation to get them to 1.7? I mean, I think that's sort of the min bar we want to hit, right? Is like, even if nothing is automated, everything is manual. Here are the steps that you follow to upgrade a kube admin cluster from 1.6 to 1.7. Can we do that? Even like, because we can keep working on that past the code freeze. We have a little bit more time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes. Okay, that seems plausible. Definitely.
There's also the etcd backup and restore type option. So in other words, yes, you have to reinstall, but we can make it easy to like move your stuff over.
Sure, right. And I think like this is where we just need to come up with a plan and document it well. I don't necessarily care what the plan is, but I would love to at least be able to tell people there is a way to upgrade. Like, we ship this thing as beta, you're not stuck. Right?
I have a related comment to that as well, Luke. In the upgrade document, the link, when you follow all the links and stuff, it's not clear to me whether we're going to make a promise that it's like, if you set it up now with 1.6, you'll be fine in 6 months, or is it one of those, at some point we're going to make you reinstall, but then after that you're going to be okay. Like, it's not clear to me. Like, do I tell people set up with 1.6 now and hang tight and we'll take care of you? Or like, are we making any guarantees, I guess, is my question.
By definition, we actually have made a guarantee by saying it's beta.
Okay.
I mean, we're on the hook.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear about that because it wasn't clear to me.
Yeah, that was kind of my point too. Like, we shipped it in beta, and part of the contract with beta is you can keep moving forward.
Yep.
Luke, I have a question. Regardless of this deadline, right? What kind of help or what kind of activities do you want to be done there in the short term and the long term? And actually, how would that relate to team's work on HA? Because updates are very, very much connected to the HA design, right? So they should be collaborative with the design team, I think, right? Is the team is working on this?
All of the HA work is kind of asynchronous at this point, working on branches, and eventually some of that stuff has already been merged, the stuff that's non-disruptive, and the other things still need documents and other full vetting to occur, and that won't happen in the 1.7 timeframe. I think what it sounds like you're asking is, I'm reinterpreting it, but it sounds like we want to have a canonical list of action items for 1.7 that folks could help out on, and potentially start to lay down the list of prioritized 1.8 items.
Yeah, that would be really helpful if you have, for example, like milestone issues, right, and some tickets that we could take on to help out. It will really help if you have them, right.
Our repository doesn't have, the kubeadm repository doesn't have the milestones flag set up. I got labeling access, but doesn't have milestones. I'd be happy to relabel things.
Yeah, it's fine. Just whatever works, right? If you can split this into some sort of chunks that easy to take on one by one, I can try to help out with that.
No, so Sasha, I really appreciate you asking. Thank you. So your question was kind of in two parts. I'll address the second part first, which was how is the upgrades work going to mesh with the HA work? If you follow the links through from where it says upgrades to the feature in the features repo, where it says upgrades with the link on the agenda to the feature on the features repo, and then follow the link again to the design proposal, which is a sketch at the moment. The design proposal for upgrades includes enough of the design for HA to make sure that the upgrades feature will work with the HA feature, because you're absolutely right, they are related and sort of interwoven. But I will also just point out that all the notes on the HA design in here, as far as I'm concerned, are going to be supplanted or replaced by Tim's proposal if they haven't already. So I'll add a note to that effect in the design doc for KubeADM upgrades. In terms of specific work items, I think firstly, reviewing the proposal would be really great, and leave some comments on there maybe. And then specifically, we need to get self-hosting working well. So getting self-hosting working at all, establishing whether self-hosting does work or not at the moment, which doesn't seem to be understood at the moment. So that would be a really good starting point. And then beyond that, I know that we need checkpointing in self-hosting so that we can survive reboots. Those two items seem like sensible groundwork items to me before we even start working on sketching out a prototype of the CLI for kubeadmin upgrade and so on.
Yes, I missed that last comment.
Oh, my last comment was just, does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. And if anyone else has different opinions about which pieces of work make sense to do first, then please chime in. Okay. Cool. Justin, do you want to talk about the add-on manager?
Yes, I just wanted to give sort of a meta update, which is sort of that there is no update. Some people had asked me whether there was progress. There is no specific progress right now. From discussions, it seems like the consensus is that people want to create an API object rather than abusing or reusing config map. And so I am looking into basically to track the state of which system add-ons are installed in their current versions and that sort of thing. So I am looking at doing that. For booting reasons, it would probably have to be in core, which means it is a much higher bar, of course. So looking at that, but no real progress.
Yeah, I think it definitely goes in core, because if you look at Brian's architecture diagram, add-ons is in that nucleus section at the beginning. So whether that's implemented via config maps or an API object, it should be in the considered part of the core of the system.
Cool. Well, thanks for the update. Yeah, that sounds good. Cool. So, Sasha, I think that's you, right? Update on CNI?
Oh yeah, just want to give a quick update on where we are with the edging CNI plugins for update for testing. So Jeremy, I think he did pass the code review with Jacob on adding a new flag to test infra. So we can now pass the different flags for CNI plugins, right? And default will be Weave, I think, according to the code review. And for the last couple of days, I kind of worked on Kubernetes Anywhere repository to plumb through that flag, basically. And I think I've done I've added Flannel based on Jamie's work, and Weave. So today I'm still testing everything from my laptop on Google. Things don't work as expected yet, but I hope I'll wrap it up today. So we'll have 2 pull requests in sync, both in test infra and Kubernetes Anywhere. And then the last bit would be to add that to actually write jobs for Jenkins that use those new features. And I know that someone from TechGuard team is working on the same, but for Canal and Calico. So hopefully we'll all converge together this week or next week, as things are a bit slow, to get the whole metrics right with this plugins. So that's it.
Very cool.
Awesome.
George, I think you have an item up next. Community
Yeah,
update?
just a reminder that it's our SIG's turn to update at the community meeting this week. I'm kind of looking. Are you giving the update, Luke, or somebody else?
Let me just check my calendar.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do that. That's fine.
Okay.
What
Awesome.
day is that?
It's this Thursday.
This Thursday. I think I'm supposed to do a demo of some configuration stuff. Who should I sync with?
Me.
Caleb, I think, pinged me.
Me and or Caleb will work for that.
Great. I will tell you guys I'm up for the demo, so I can do that config map demo if that's a good time.
Yes, that makes Luke really happy.
Yay, demoing things. Demos make me happy. That's good. Cool. I will still show up and give a more general update, but then we can also have the config map demo. That's super. So, Mike, you're noticing that you're here. I think Tim had some comments earlier that he was waiting for you to arrive to ask you about.
So there's questions about the release repository and who kind of owns and manages that, namely like some of the packaging stuff for bootstrapping kubeadm, the precursor parts.
Right. Well, so it's kind of gets passed around. There's no real SIG build. So sometimes it's, some people say it should be SIG release. Sometimes it's SIG-cluster-lifecycle, and really it's whoever sends PRs. But are you commenting specifically OS packaging?
I wanted to do PRs for that. Plus there's another comment about restructuring some things, but you wanted to wait until some of the tooling had its own infra. And
So,
I think that's like waiting for the sun to die.
No. So the problem is we kind of went with a prepackaged solution that was originally very quick to get off the ground. I think the correct place to get this is integrated in our release, so that when we run Anago, which is the script that actually cuts a release, we update a Debian and apt repository synchronously with debs built. Alternatively, we could explore packaging and upstream like you were doing in EPEL, but the problem, it might not be a problem for EL, but for Debian, the stable releases are, it's very difficult to get something into the stable branch at a frequency higher than 6 months, other than patch releases. So it doesn't really align with how frequently we want to release. So what I was considering is creating a GCS bucket that I could grant community people on the release team access to push to, and we could host apt and RPM repositories there. And maybe not RPM, maybe we want to go with just EL. That it can be Google funded, but it just needs to be able to, we need to be able to give permission to the release team to push. And then somebody needs to write the scripts to maintain that as part of Anago.
Okay, that answers most of my question. I'm happy to push my stuff back up to upstream too. I just wanted to make sure that they got into channel and then met all the specs, because the packages we produce currently have a known number of deficiencies that would never.
Absolutely.
So what I'll just try and do is take that same package spec files and push them into the release repository and coordinate with someone in the release team to try and get them built as part of the build process.
Sure. Can you what is the summary of the deficiencies that you see, other than like not built from source?
That's the big one.
So that's the one that wouldn't get us into Debian or EPL right now.
Yes.
They would probably not allow that.
I have the mechanism to do everything from scratch, which will auto pull from the spec, and then build from source, and that's all done for all the CNI stuff. So I can contribute that back.
Mm-hmm. And we have a way of, so for the CI, we kind of have some build targets that produce these on the fly for CI testing. I'm not sure if we want those to be separate. I'm not sure how quickly, like if we could do this on a per PR or per push.
All we'd have to do is do the similar thing that upstreams do, is they just have a stable and testing repos. So if you have a testing repo, you can constantly churn on that thing.
And who has to pay for the resources that do the churning?
I don't know who else other than Google would host it.
Okay, so we would host something that does RPM builds.
Yep.
Okay. I'm interested in looking into this. So please push. Please send out some PRs.
Okay.
Hey, Tim and Mike, I wanted to speak up too, because I'm interested in this topic as well. Namely, getting snap packages built in a similar fashion. So we have build scripts that produce snap packages for the releases today, but we are also interested in getting that upstream as well, so that for every Kubernetes release, along with RPM, etc., we get snap packages built.
Yeah, I am definitely interested in producing snap packages. I know very little about that package manager, but I am interested in producing snap packages, and I've actually talked to people at Canonical who are also interested. I don't know if anybody on the call is from Canonical, but
I'm actually from Canonical, and there's a couple other of us in here too. So I'm glad you're interested. So I'll just be interacting with you guys going forward, I guess, to see what we can do there.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. The release is somewhat neglected, and every so often when we cut a release, a bunch of people work on it, and then it sort of goes neglected for another 2 months. But it'd be good to get some ownership over there.Maybe we can do like periodic meetups as part of a working group. Isn't there a new SIG release that was formed? I think maybe you guys. Yeah, but so the problem was with SIG release is. I don't know. Maybe if like Caleb was on SIG release or somebody else is on the call, I think they didn't want to take ownership of actual like build related stuff, and they wanted to work on issue tracking and failing test tracking coming up to the release. I think that was so I guess this would be more of a working group for build related.
Okay, so you're saying the charter of SIG release is process management as opposed to actually making a release?
Correct.
Well, it's actually both. So that we have the release team that's responsible for making the release, and SIG release is responsible. So the release team is contained within SIG release. That's the idea, and the SIG release produces process and tooling to support the release process. So it seems as if building packages would fall under SIG releases. Responsibility unless someone else wanted to keep it.
Sure.
No, I think SIG release is the right place to do it. I think we should sort of use that as the coordination point
And if people from other areas want to help work on the release, they should work with SIG release, because that's where the expertise is on, like you said, like the process, the triage, and hopefully the tooling to produce releases, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is we probably don't want to do this. Like we do. I think release is overloaded. We need to be able to do a release per push, right? That's what we do now. We create a release and we push it to GCS for testing. So it's in that sense, I don't know if like we should be calling these like builds rather than releases. This is not the release that happens every 3 months. This is the release that happens, hundreds of times per hour.
I think that's totally fair, because that's like doing a build is a prerequisite to cutting a release.
Sure.
I would hope that they would own that process as well.
Can I ask, does tying into Anago tie us to the Kubernetes repo and the Kubernetes release lifecycle? Because at least with kops, it's not practical to release when Kubernetes releases. Like the Kubernetes.o releases aren't typically ready, and there just isn't enough time in between like the last code commit going in to like get things working. So like releasing at the same time is dangerous.
I think it's kind of an open question, especially as we start to break up the main repository on how we coordinate these. And obviously, we felt that it wasn't only dangerous, we actually felt the repercussions last time we released kubeadmin, which went terribly. So I think it's definitely an open question, especially as we start to track issues and code across repos. We need to figure out how to safely do these releases.
Like it's to me.
Yeah, so I maybe stop by SIG release whenever that is. I'll try to stop by.
Cool. Tim, were there any other issues that you wanted to, or any other topics that you wanted to raise? Or were you isn't here today?
I just wanted to, if anyone knew the origin of the self-hosted breakage, when it broke, how they reproduced it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if anyone knows, please shout. Cool. So I don't think we have anything else on the agenda right now. Does anyone have any other topics?
There was a request to talk about the idea of using secrets to store the custom CA or the cluster CA. Tim, did you still have questions about that, or is that being covered in the issue?
I don't know if there's an answer. It sounds like there's a non-answer. So there was a couple of folks who did a PR to put the certs as secrets as part of startup routine. And the problem with that is that secrets aren't necessarily secret, and RBAC isn't locked down in a way that controllers don't have access to everything, right? So it's a weird chicken egg problem with security, and I listened to the SIG auth call, and it sounded like everyone just went in circles.
Yeah. So I think you've stumbled upon like a broader conversation that we're having around secrets, which is kind of unfortunate. I think the main takeaways that I'd like to highlight here is, for a lot of clusters, read for secrets in the kube system namespace is equivalent to root. There's a big question of if that needs to be true, and if we are, trying to develop clusters where that is not necessarily true.
Well, I also thought the problem we have currently too, and other people might comment on it because this actually is a cluster lifecycle question, is do we think or believe that the kube system namespace is getting overloaded with a lot of components and data?
Yeah, it was sort of funny. One of the recommendations was create a TPR possibly that holds these things, and it's easier to lock down the secrets. I don't have a good answer to that on the auth side.
There's a concrete implication of namespaces, right? Which is that the only way to do RBAC permissions is on a namespace basis, as far as I understand. And so there have been like tidiness issues with like throwing everything into kube system before, but now we have a concrete, like perhaps we should have a namespace for everything that we develop independently. So one for kube controller, one for API server, one for, and so on, because unless there's a plan to change the idea that namespaces control auth scope, then we should bite the bullet and split them all out.
Yeah, there's two comments there. One, theoretically, we do have the ability to limit the read access for to a particular resource. RBAC does have that power. However, there are a lot of controllers and things that simply say we have to read all of the secrets in the cluster, or sort of do that by default. The ingress controller is a good example of one of those, where it's sort of like by default reads all the secrets. Federation API server API control plane is another one that sort of requires the ability to watch all secrets and all namespaces.
I have a question about that though. Is like, why do they need to look at the kube system namespace?
It's like, so they do not. I would argue that they don't, but practically, when I look at a lot of clusters, there are a lot of things that are reading this namespace. Regardless of if that's good practice or not, it's sort of technical debt that I think that we're paying off. Yeah.
There's a new controller coming in 1.7, right? The Cloud Controller Manager. Should we recommend that one at least go into a new namespace and see how it goes? Maybe.
I haven't been up to date on that work, so I can't comment.
Well, it's just a new controller, right? All the cloud providers are moving out of Kube Controller Manager into new Kube Controller Manager.
Yeah. I think that there's also this sort of parallel work, which is brought up in the comment, which is that there's sort of been work to develop secrets, or at least develop best practices around secrets. That unfortunately isn't going to be scoped for 1.7 or even 1.8. It's a very long-term process, but that can also be one of these mechanisms by which we can improve the ability for things to have access to sensitive information. So, unfortunately, Tim, yeah, I think you're right. We didn't come to a concrete solution there, so maybe we'll just keep that issue.
Yeah, I might go and sit down on SIG-auth just to poke them repeatedly on the topic, because it seems to me like the kube system namespace alone, this is just my anecdotal observation, seems to be getting overloaded to the point where permissions are fuzzy, and the permissions on controllers are also very fuzzy. We're giving controllers basically root level access to everything.
Yeah, to an extent. There are, I know that with the recent RBAC rollout, there's been explicit sort of attempts to give each controller profiles, like, here's the RBAC profile for a particular controller X, Y, or Z. So that also might play into that.
And generally, controllers reach out of their namespace, so it may be in some instances breaking up the kube system namespace might be useful, but generally, I would see that is kind of almost orthogonal.
I think, well, it kind of is orthogonal. I think you'd almost want exclusion of everything but one. So as long as they have permissions to read everything in their name, every other namespace but one, right?
Yeah, Tim, do you know offhand if there's a way to do that in RBAC? Is it just, do you just supply grants, or can you supply?
I do not.
There are no negative rules in RBAC, so you cannot say that you have every resource but this, or every namespace but this. You'd have to write a controller to manipulate those rules.
Or we could do something with like a custom admission for kube system.
Yeah.
Outside of auth.
Yeah, I mean, that's being done for nodes right now. So that there is some precedence for that. I think that this is I'll follow back up on the issue and sort of keep responding. And I think that this is more of a SIG off conversation at this point.
I mean, it is in the sense that it's very auth centric, but it has a huge impact on cluster lifecycle, because if the decision is you shall not store cluster root level certificates in the kubesystem namespace, then that kind of breaks a lot of the plans for self-hosting, right? Like, because that's where you put the data so that you can do upgrades, so that you can move your API server around, and you don't have things tied to the local disk.
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, this is how we do it internally for Tectonic, simply with the idea that, read on kube system is root already. I think there's the main conversation is sort of like, does that have to be the case, and will that be the case in the future? So, is this a to-do item for later releases where, we put it in the kube system right now, and then as we continue to make progress, we take it out? I don't know. But if this did go in, then it would be a to-do, I guess, is the note.
It's today, as of today, it's reasonably isolated, and there was a conversation on the SIG-auth call that it's no worse than what we are at today. So we're not like exposing new holes. We're already just flagrantly saying we have a hole, and just maybe pounding it a little wider. But I think there would have to be some migration that allows the upgrade process, if we ever did find a new home for some of these certs, that would allow it to migrate from point A to point B. And that could be built into kubeadm itself, or that could be part of a separate, migration story or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to give a background on sort of within that document, or within that issue, there is a link to sort of what secrets look like in the roadmap, and sort of the TLDR is trying to get these stuff like encryption at rest, but largely it's to get pod identity and defer to external secret stores like Vault or whatever. So is that migratable from a kubeadm perspective? I don't know what that looks like in 1.9 or 1.10 or whatever that's marked for. Anyway, I don't know if there's any more questions or any more comments, but yeah, sorry to end on such a high note.
It's okay, no problem. I mean, it sounds like a thorny issue. Yeah, I guess my perspective on it is we just need to make sure that we keep communicating between SIG-auth and SIG-cluster-lifecycle about whether any changes around this do impact on our plans to provide the UX we want.
Yeah, thanks for at least tagging the SIG on that issue.
Cool. Okay, any other comments or topics that people want to discuss?
I have a meta comment, which is looking at the 1.7 features, it doesn't seem like there's anything of the scope that we saw in 1.6 in terms of impact. I don't know if anyone else has anything that they are monitoring in terms of impact for installers like kubeadm and COPS and all of those. I don't know if anyone else has any like red flags that they want to raise now, but looking at 1.7, I'm not too worried, which probably means that it will be another challenge, but I don't know if anyone's aware of anything. And whether because we still have time to mitigate it now is sort of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I don't know anything, but does anyone else have any thoughts on things that are landing, have landed, will land, that will cause problems?
The only known that I know about is that we're still releasing 1.7 on 3.0.17 etcd, and that still has the known quorum read IOP deficiency that was fixed in 3.1. So if you're working on AWS and you're at a reasonable scale, you got to make sure you monitor your IOPS to your whatever your backing storage location is.
Is the upgrade from 3.0 to 3.1 easier?
Yes, there's nothing magical there. It's a single dot release is painless. It's done on the back end. So
cool. Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for the heads up on that. Any other topics? Anything else? Anyone? Going once? Going twice? Okay, let's knock it on the head. Thanks, everyone. And I am away next week on vacation. So I will, well, does anyone want to volunteer to chair the SIG next week? If not, I will ask some people who aren't here.
I can probably do it, Luke.
Okay.
It's a day after a holiday for us, but yeah, we can probably make it.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Let's assume that you will, unless we say otherwise, if that's okay. Cool.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and speak to you soon. Bye.